Hi friends, welcome to my channel, and today in this video I'm going to show you how to create a System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2016 highly availability cluster with SQL Server 2016 always on availability group. So basically we are going to set up a infrastructure with the uh, virtual machine manager, which is going to be highly available, like a 2 node SQL cluster. We are going to have a 2 node VMM cluster. We are going to have a 2 node scale out file server. We are going to have a 2 node Hyper-V cluster. So basically it's fully redundant system center virtual machine manager infrastructure, where you can host your public or private cloud, or you can run your VMM infrastructure. So here you can see I'm using lots of virtual machine here. So basically I'm going to give you the scene what we are going to use. So the first machine is basically a DC01. Here you can see which having Active Directory and DNS role. And basically in this screen you can see we have a 2 NIC on each one virtual machine. So everything is running on a virtual machine. If I show you Hyper-V manager, you can see I am running all the machine under my Hyper-V server. So all these machines are a Hyper-V virtual machine, and you can see the respective RAM is assigned, everything is there. So let's verify the settings. So on a domain DC01 I have only one NIC. Just all the machines having two virtual NIC, one for domain connectivity and second for VMM, for a cluster. So basically we are going to have a cluster second network available for a cluster configurations. And I'm going to make it very simple, because I'm not going to create a multiple NIC here, like 3 or 4, one for domain, one for cluster, one for live migration, one for storage. So in a production it's always recommended to have a multiple NIC for a specific task, but this is the demo environment, so I'm going to make it very simple by having a 2 NIC, one for cluster, all the cluster activity, and the first one is for your domain connectivity. And you can see what user account I am using here. I have a domain which is if I go here on my Active Directory server, you can see my domain name is victorinfosol.com. So these all account are domain accounts. So all these account having like domain administrator access. So these are all the machines. So first one is domain controller, then we have a two host for SQL server, we have two hosts for VMM, we have two hosts for scale out file system, and we have a two host for um, Hyper-V Hyper-V server. So we are going to use a total 9 virtual machines here to give you the demo of this all the infrastructure. And if you want to see, I can show you. This is my Active Directory server. If I go Active Directory server, Active Directory users in computers, you can see here all the virtual machine is added here, which is my servers like Hyper-V 1, 2, scale out 1, 2, SQL 1, 2, VMM 1, 2. So all the machines is currently joined in my domain. So this is all the, and I have logged in with the respective account on all the virtual machines. So, and you can see the roles also. This one is Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, the SQL node, VMM server, file server, and Hyper-V server. So these are my nodes. And the next we have a cluster computer object in Active Directory, which we don't have right now. You can see we have only a computer account. So when we are going to set up all the infrastructure, we are going to create a SQL server cluster, we are going to create a VMM cluster, we are going to create a Hyper-V cluster, VMM cluster. So everything is there. You can see like first one is for win-sql-clu, which is Windows SQL failover cluster. We have a SQL listener, which is a SQL listener availability group. We have this. So I'm going to create these all cluster group one by one when we are following this video to create a highly available infrastructure for VMM. So I'm going to proceed with the first task here. If I minimize this screen, you can see here the first task we have to deployment of SQL Server 2016 highly availability group with 2 node, and the second we are going to have a deployment of scale out file system cluster with 2 node, and then we are going to deploy deployment of VMM 2016 high level group 2 node cluster, and finally we have deployment of Hyper-V cluster with 2 nodes. So I'm going to cover all these things in this video. So before this, I'm going to start from here. The first task which we need to do, deployment of SQL Server 2016 highly available group with 2 node. So you can see we have two things here. The pre-install means these role is already installed on my machine, and this is implementation which we need to do. So you can see I have already installed a Vim, like a failover cluster, multipath, IO, and .NET. So you can see these role is installed on all the virtual machine which is for like a VMM, or which is for Hyper-V or whatever. So I'm going to start from here. So the first thing we need to do here, create a map quorum disk with both SQL Server cluster node. So where we have to create this quorum disk. So I have installed my, I'm going to close this Hyper-V manager. I have connected all the servers here. So I have installed my SQL ISKC target server on this machine, which is my domain controller, and I having like around 500 GB SSD map to this server. So I'm going to create a first disk for my SQL server. So I'm going to put select D, and if you don't have, you can go ahead and install ISKC target server on this virtual machine or any physical machine which you want to use as a ISKC provider, ISKC learn provider. So I'm going to use this machine, my domain controller, for a demo purpose. In a D drive, I'm going to save this to drive. So I'm going to put here SQL quorum disk, click next. I'm going to put like dynamic, and I'm going to give 1 GB size, and target I am going to create a new ISKC target. In new ISKC target, I'm going to define SQL target, enter, and in access server I have to make sure I'm putting both the IP address of my both SQL servers. So if I go on first page, you can see I have SQL server like 192.168.1.253 and 252. So I'm going to put those machines IP address 1.253, and next one is select the IP address. I'm going to put 192.168.252. Click next and create. So this is going to create it. So now we have a quorum disk connected, and now I'm going to click on my SQL server, and under the SQL server I'm going to click on ISKC initiator, and it's asking the Microsoft ISKC server is not running, service is not running, it's required to start ISKC server first correctly. So go ahead, and same I'm going to run on my SQL cluster 2. Yes. So I'm going to put my target server IP address, which is 192.168.1.254, and here you can see the target is connected. Good to know that. And now I'm going to enable the multipathing on it. And if I go to disk management now, I have here 1 gig drive connected. Going to enable it and going to give the drive letter, creating new volume, going to put Q, and I'm going to put like SQL QUO quorum disk, and good to go. And now you can see on SQL 1 we are ready with this disk, which is quorum disk. And same I'm going to do on my SQL node 2. I'm going to put my target IP address, connect. I'm going to enable the multipathing, and I'm going to open my disk management here on node 2, and just bring online this disk. So need to change it. I'm going to assign it Q letter for the quorum disk. So now everything is done. So we have successfully created our SQL quorum disk, and it has it's mapped with both the SQL node. So we are good with this. Now what is the next step? We have add required permission to SQL node to create an object in AD. So when we are going to create a SQL server cluster, it's going to create an object in our AD server. So I am going to make sure like this is the SQL server object, which is we have to make sure that the host can create. So I'm going to assign this to SQL node 1 and 2 permission to create a Active Directory object. So in AD, I'm going to click on properties, and you make sure you have enabled advanced feature. Then I'm going to select my server view where we have these object, all the servers. I'm going to properties, and under the security I'm going to click my servers here, computer account. I'm going to put here like L-SQL. So I'm going to select my both account and click on advanced. Or also you can need to select here like full control. I'm going to assign this, and if in good you in advanced, see here this object and only. So I'm going to make sure like it's having dependent object also where it can write and read. So we are done with this. So the second step is also done. Now what I have to do, create a Windows Server cluster with both SQL nodes. So I'm going to create a SQL cluster, uh, basically a Windows cluster with these two clusters, server node, SQL node 1 and node 2. So I'm going to open a failover cluster manager on node 1, SQL node 1, and I'm going to create and validate configuration. Click next. I'm going to add both the servers here, the SQL node 1 and 2. I'm just typing the IP address of it. So I have selected both the nodes. Click next. I want to run the test for all recommended to just see everything else looks good with us. So it's running the test now. So everything is looking green now. So it's going to take few minutes to complete this test. So I'm going to pause the recording. Once the test is completed, I will write back. So everything looks good now. You can see succeeded, and if you want you can go ahead and you can watch the see the report also. So everything looks good. We have a few warning in network, the rest everything looks good. So I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to create a cluster now. So in cluster I'm going to get the detail from here. So my IP address should be for cluster 231 and the cluster name should be win-sql-cluster. So I'm going to type my cluster name win-sql-clu, and the IP address should be 231. So let's move, click next, and add all eligible stores to this cluster. You can see it's forming the cluster. I can see you have successfully completed a create cluster with that, and now we are going to have a cluster here, basic Windows cluster which having two nodes. If I go to storage, you can see we have a quorum disk assigned which is 1 gig. So I'm going to make sure this is renamed properly. So SQL quorum disk, and I'm going to rename the network cards also. This is the domain NIC, and this will be a cluster NIC. So we are good with this cluster which we have just created for SQL Windows cluster. So now we are good with this, and now we need to go and run the first step, which is install SQL Server on both SQL nodes, so which I'm going to do now. So I have mounted the SQL Server cluster, SQL Server installation media on my both the servers. So I'm going to run it. I have executed on both the nodes now. I'm going to follow the screen, click on install, and install the standalone installation, because we are going to make it like highly availability group, so it should be SQL Server standalone installation. So I'm going to run on node 2 also. I'm going to use the evaluation version. Click next. Accept the license term. Click next. Next. Leave everything default here. So we have warning on firewall and network.net app security, so go with it. And the feature which we need, a database engine and analysis service and full text support. So select all these options, click next. And I'm going to use the default instance MS SQL Server. Click next. And to services, I want to run a domain account which is Win Victor Info Soul, and here I want to put SQL admin. I want to copy this, put it back, main account. So I haven't like typed my username and password, which is for domain. And I'm going to add the current account, and I'm going to use my VMM account here as SQL admin. So click next. And same I'm going to use for the analysis services, the VMM account also here. So good with it, click next. Now finally we can go ahead and click on install button to begin the installation for SQL Server 2016. And same I want to follow on my SQL node 1. So I accept, click next here, leave the default. So SQL Server is going to take around 5 to 10 minutes to get the installation done. So everything looks good. Select the required feature, database, full text, analysis services, click next. Leave the default instance name MS SQL, click next. And I'm going to use my domain account again to run the services on node 1 also with the domain account only. Click next. Add current account, add VMM account also. On database engine configuration, click next. On analysis services, also need to add the both account SQL admin and VMM admin. Click next. And we are almost done with this. Click on install to begin the installation. So this installation is going to take some time, so I'm going to pause the recording for now. Once the installation is done on both the SQL node, I'm going to start the next step, which is configure availability groups. So I'm going to stop now, pause the recording for now. So on node 2 you can see the SQL Server 2016 installation is completed successfully. Everything looks good. I'm going to close this. I'm also going to close this installation center, so you can see now SQL Server 2016 Management Studio is not coming including with this installation center. So I have downloaded it separately from Microsoft, and I'm going to run this setup to install a management console on this machine. So you can see this is 16.5.1 SQL Server Management Studio. So I'm going to click on install. So I'm doing this installation on my Node 2. So this machine is now going to have a Management Studio and SQL Server 2016 both installed. And let's verify on SQL 1. The installation is still running. So this installation is going to take some time. It's around going to take 5 to 10 minutes to get the installation done for Management Studio. So on SQL Node 1 is also completed, SQL Server 2016 installation. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to run the Management Studio setup again now at this machine. So here is it. Click on install. So the Management Studio is running on both the machines. So I'm going to pause the recording for now. Once the Management Studio is done, we will verify and we will reboot both the SQL node and we'll follow the next steps. So I'm going to pause the recording for now. So node 2 SQL Management Studio is completed. I'm going to reboot this server now. And before rebooting, I'm going to make sure I have a SQL Server Management icon on my desktop. So I'm going to send to my desktop. And I want one more thing from here, which is SQL Server Configuration Manager. So go to open file and send to the desktop. Now I'm going to go to reboot this machine. So restart is going to take some time. So still on this node 1 is installation is running. So I'm going to again pause the recording. Once the both server is rebooted, I'm going to carry forward from there. So both the server has been rebooted after Management Studio setup. So now I'm going to enable the configure availability group. So I have opened the SQL Server configuration manager under the SQL services. If I double click on MS SQL services, you will see here always on availability group where the Windows failover cluster name is detected. So I'm going to click enable always on availability group, apply. So it's asking we need to restart the service to take the effect. So I'm going to restart it. So same need to wait, do on SQL Node 2. So I'm going to run on configuration manager on 2 and SQL Server services. Under the SQL Server, I'm going to click here and enable the always availability group and restart the service. And next task, we need to create a temporary database and backup. So I'm going to do this on my SQL Node 1. So SQL Server Management Studio. I'm opening on my Node 1 to just verify it. So the first time it's going to take some time. So I'm going to click on connect. And here we are. So I'm going to create one temporary database called like tempdb and click OK. So we have created temporary database and now I'm going to take a backup. So database, I need to click task, right click and select backup and just want to click on OK. So it's going to take the backup of database tempdb completed successfully. So we are good with this, and now we can go and create a availability group with this both SQL Server nodes. So I'm going to do it under the always availability group. I'm going to click new availability group wizard. This is what we need. So if you want you can go and review these all the things. So I'm good with this, so I'm going to click on next and specify the group. So I'm going to call like SQL AG VMM. Click next, and now we can see we identify the temp DB is there and it meets the requirements, so we are good with it. Click next, and here we have a SQL replication. So I'm going to select here automatic failover up to 3 times, and I'm going to readable secondary. I'm going to select yes, and I want to add a replica here, so click on add. I'm going to click on my SQL Server Connect Node 2, verify this setting also, so everything looks good. Also, if you have Azure replica you can connect it, so on an endpoint you can verify everything is looking good here. Now backup preference, you can say it's like prefers second only, what we can prefer the backup preference. So on a listener we need to add one listener here, so I'm going to create a create an availability group listener. So I'm going to put here like name. So listener name I have here, which is SQL hyphen listener. So I'm going to put here SQL hyphen listener, and the port should be 1433, and I'm going to add the static IP address which is given here. So the listener IP address is 192.168.1.232, so I'm going to put here. And you need to make sure you need to create the DNS entry on your domain with this listener hostname. So I'm going to open my DNS record. I'm going to create one entry for this. So I'm going to call new host record and going to put my IP address of listener IP address to get add. And so I have added this listener name here. You can see it's added SQL listener, and the reverse lookup is also created for this, so we are good. So click on this, next. Click on next, and now we have a shares where we want to put the data for synchronization preference. So I want to create one folder here on my on Active Directory server, or you can create on anywhere. So I'm going to create here because it's a highly available database. So SQL sync, and then click on properties, and I'm going to share this folder with everyone. And also in a security I'm going to give the permission to everyone for make a simple example. If you have like, if you want to restrict it in a production, you can restrict this by like providing some specific group access to this. So I have everyone added here, and now if I go here and type the path of this share, so L-DC01. So I have SQL sync. I'm going to copy this path and paste it here. Click next. Now you can see it's running the result for availability group validation. So everything seems successfully. So I'm going to click next and click on finish. So it's going to run now task to create a configure the endpoints. So it's going to take some time here. So I'm going. So the wizard completed successfully. So it's everything looking good. So I click close here, and now if you go here on dashboard, so the dashboard, you can see the information that the availability group has been synced, and you can see the database is there, and you can see the primary role where, and you have a secondary. So also if you want you can like start a failover or view the events, health, everything. So we have successfully configured our 2-node SQL server, SQL Server 2016 with a highly available take group. Now we are going to go with the next step. So I'm going to click on next step, where we have to deploy scale out file server cluster with 2 nodes. So you can see it's pre-installed, and I'm going to start from implementation. So create and map a quorum disk with the both SQL both SOFS server. So I'm going to done this first. So here I'm going to click on add. Now let's create the first, we need to create the cluster disk. So I'm going to create a quorum disk. So fs quo quorum disk. The size should be 1 gig. Click next. I'm going to create a new target and call it like fs target, and put the IP address of access server. So in our case this is 248 and 249, so I'm going to put this 192.168.1.248. The second is 192.168.1.240. what was left, it's we need to put 249. So good to go. Click next and click on create, and same, we need to add one more disk for the data. Click next. I'm going to call it like fscsv01 and make it like 301 gig. Click next and map with fs target. It should be mapped to file server target only. So we are done with this. And now we need to create a Windows cluster. So I'm going to create a Windows cluster here on my file server. So before doing this, I want to install a file server role on both the servers. So you can see we have a file server role. So I'm going to install it, and then we will create a cluster, simple Windows cluster. So this is not going to take much time. You can see the installation is succeeded. I'm going to run a failover cluster manager on my file server 1 and validate configurations. Click next, put the both the machine. So 248 and the second machine is 249. So fs1 and fs2. Click next and go with all the default tests. So it's going to take some time. Succeeded on this node also, so close this and let's wait for this configuration wizard to complete. Then we will try to configure create the cluster. Until this is running, we can actually proceed with next step, which is add a required permission for scale out file server nodes to create a AD object. So I'm going to do it now on my AD server, and under the Active Directory I'm going to click on properties, security, click on add, and I want to add my both the nodes. So let's click here on plus. So make sure we have computer only. Click on find and select both the nodes. Click OK. I'm going to click on full control to both the machines. If I go here, I need to select, like, I want to give dependence object also. So we are good with this. So I'm going to click OK. Now let's verify what is condition here. So still test is running. So I'm going to pause the recording for now. Once its test is completed, we will create a Windows cluster for both the nodes. So we have to check one name for which is called like win-fs-cluster. So this is we need to create. So I'm pausing the recording. I'll carry forward from there. We have everything looks good, so I'm going to create a cluster now with this wizard. So I'm going to type the name win fs-clu, and the IP address should be 235. So 235, click next. Add all eligible storage to the cluster, and it's creating now. And after that we need to do this, configure a scale out file server role. So just wait for this solution to create new cluster wizard to complete. So you have successfully completed create cluster wizard. Click on finish. And now I'm going to verify few renames here. So okay, so we have created the quorum disk, but we have not mapped, so I'm going to map now so you can get the idea how you can map. So I'm on my node 1 and I'm going to launch ISKC target on load node 2 also. So put the IP address of our target server, which is 254, and I'm going to connect this with multipathing. And on this also I'm going to node 2 also I'm going to connect the 254. And now I'm going to click open disk management. And serialize disk to call it like Q drive first and call it FS quorum disk, and this should be our D drive, which is called CSV01. And I'm going to open a disk management on this machine also on FS01 to bring the disk online. So the disk is online on our node 2. If you want, you can verify from here. Same I want to do from here. So the first thing I'm going to enable this drive, so it's having CSV01, and change the letter. So we got the same drive letter on both the machines. So this disk is mapped on both the quorum disk, mapped on both the disk is basically mapped on FS1 and FS2, both the machines. So now if I go here and add disk, see both the disk here. So I've added both the disks. So I'm going to use this disk as a quorum. So I'm going to rename as FS quorum disk, and this should be CSV01. I'm going to define the quorum disk, more action, configure quorum settings. I'm going to use the default quorum configuration and click on finish. So you can see this machine, this 1 gig disk is converted to the disk witness in quorum. So good to know that. And I'm going to rename the cluster next now. So call it like domain, and this I'm going to convert in a cluster. And now the last step, configure scale out file server, which I'm going to do now. So here I'm going to click on configure role, click next, and need to select the file server role, click next, and we have to select a scale out file server for application where the SMB is going to be created, and it's going to use for Hyper-V. So click next, type the client access role. So what we have here, uh, I'm going to type like SOFC CLU cluster. Click next and click on finish. Next. So we have here created. Now you can see its role is not coming online because it's not having permission to create a AD account. So I'm going to create it for you. So now you can see we have here few objects, and I need to give this FS cluster account to create object in AD. Then we are good with it. So I'm going to select my computer account and I'm going to type here win fs CLU apply. Okay, I'm going to give it permission, proper permission. So apply. Okay, okay. Now if I go here and click on start role, you can see role is up now. Now I can go here and create a share. So add share, and whatever share you want. So I need a application. So give it some time. Here you can see the application, which you can see this profile create SMB file share setting appropriated for Hyper-V contain certain database or other applications. So I'm going with this and type the path. So we have a path here. So I'm going to put the path. Like you can see, this is a cluster storage. It's not in cluster storage. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to bring this storage first and CSV disk. So available storage, add it to cluster storage, and now we can go ahead and do this add share. So add file share, select applications, and path you can see selective volume. So we are good with this. So I'm going to click next. The share name should be VMM HA. So this is the path which we are going to access on a remote path. So click next and enable. Make sure we have enabled the enable continuous availability, which is by default if you select application type of shares. So if you want, you can add the permissions here. You can also verify change it later on. So now you can see we have successfully created share and successfully created scale out file server. So we are good with this. And the next option is the create VMM deployment of VMM 2016 highly availability cluster with the 2 nodes. So I'm going to start from here. So the first task we need to create a cluster and quorum disk and map with the both VMM's cluster nodes. So I'm going here on my DC01 and I'm going to create one disk here for VMM quorum. So the C drive and put VMM quorum disk and give it 1 gig size, and the target should be new. What is the VMM machine's IP? I need to fetch from DNS. I can fetch so 51, 251 and 250. So I'm going to use this. So call it like VMM target and put the IP address of both the servers. So 192.168.1.251. The second should be 192.168.1.250. Both the servers has been added. Click next, next, and create. Now on VMM server, I need to open an ISC initiator on VM1, and same I want to open on my 2 server also. Put here the IP address of our target server. Done. Connect with the multipathing. Okay, and same I want to do here also. 192.168.1.254. Click OK, connect with it. Now I'm going to open the disk management on my VMM01 to verify the disk is mapped or not. You can see we have a disk here, so I'm going to bring online and select GPT. I'm going to put here name. Drive letter should be Q. So this is, I'm going to put VMM quorum disk, and we are good with this. Same I'm going to map with my VMM2 server, so disk management, rescan disk, enable, and change this to Q drive. So we are good. Now we can move to next step, which is create Windows cluster with both VMM cluster nodes. So I'm going to do this now. So same procedure to create a cluster. Go to failover cluster manager, run the validation, click next, put the IP address of both the VMM server. So we have VMM1, VMM2, click next, run the test, complete test, and while the test is running we can proceed with the next step, which is add required permission to VMM node to create a AD object. So I'm going to do this. So for this, here I'm going in my AD, I require to add a security group. Under the security I need to select my VMM servers. So VMM1 and 2, click OK. I'm going to give full control to both. Other advanced, I'm going to click all dependent objects also. So click OK. Now proceed with the next step, which is create distributed key management container for scvmm. So I'm going to do this now. This should be required to do by from ADSI edit. So I'm going to connect with the default option, and here I'm going to click and create a new container and call it VMM and click finish. So I want to give permission here to my VMM servers and a cluster. So I'm going to type now for, like you can see, VMM admin account, which I have full control, and both the VMM server I'm going to give for now. Later on we need to add a VMM cluster also here. So click OK, and it's done. Let's verify the cluster status. So everything is completed, test is completed. I'm going to create cluster by using this wizard. So the IP address and host name we need to get from here. So it's win hyphen VMM hyphen cluster, and the IP address is 233. So I'm going to type here win hyphen VMM and CLU and 233. Click next and add all eligible storage to this cluster. Now you can, if you go here, you will see it's creating a new object when hyphen VMM hyphen cluster. So it's almost done. It's require a few more seconds. So click on finish, and now you can see the cluster has been created, and we have 2 nodes on it. And let's rename this storage and network. So I'm going to call it like quorum disk, and the network also we need to rename. So I'm going to call it domain, and this is going to be a cluster. So we are good. And next we have already done this key management and the third step. So in the third step we need to do one more thing, add the in ADSI edit VM container we need to add a cluster object also, VMM cluster. So I'm going to type here win hyphen VMM hyphen CLU, check the computer, click check name. So it's coming now. Apply, go to advanced, and make sure we have given dependent objects also. So everything looks good now. And now we can move to next step, which is install VMM 2016 prerequisites. So Windows ADK, SQL, and these all things. So I'm going to run the setup for ADK now on my node 1 first. Click next. Don't want to participate. This is Windows 10 ADK, so I accept. And what I have to install, basically need to install this Windows ADK deployment and P mainly. So I'm going to click on install now. Same I'm going to do on my node 2 also. Don't want to participate, I accept. So we also need to install this SQL command line tool and odbc driver. So I have already downloaded these thing on both node and drivers. So your downloads, you can see node 1, and you can also verify on node 2 also download. So after the Windows ADK, once the Windows ADK is finished, you can see it's finished. Now we can proceed with the installation of these 2 tools. Next I accept, and this is odbc driver, so I'm going to install it. Yes, I want to install. Click on finish. So once this is installed, I'm going to reboot my node 1. So and same, I want to install this Windows ADK is done. So close this and go to downloads and run these 2 software installations, SQL odbc driver and command line utility. Click next, accept, install. Yes, I want to run this. Click on I accept, next, and install it. So this is a verify the VM01 VMM01 is up, so it's rebooted, and now I'm going to reboot my this node. So both the server is rebooted, and now I'm going to run the VMM installation 2016 installation on primary VMM node. So I'm going to run out VMM01 first. So here's my node 01, and on this I have mounted the VMM 2016 installation media. So click on install button. Click on VMM management installation. So this is saying the setup is running on a cluster node. You would like to install VMM management server on the cluster and make it highly available. Yes, I want. That's why we have created the cluster. So click next and leave the default. If you have a product key, you can put the product key. So I accept the license. Diagnostic and data users, click next, and I don't want to use the Microsoft update by default. Click next. Now on a server name, we need to put our SQL server name, which we have SQL listeners. So I'm going to copy this name from here, and on a VMM I'm going to put this, and the port should be 1433, and I'm going to use the credential vector infosol hyphen SQL admin, and I'm going to put the password for this machine, and good to go. Click next. And now the cluster configuration, what we need to configure. So we have to verify what we have to put here. So I'm going to put the VMM hyphen role here. So call it VMM hyphen role, and the IP address should be 243. So I'm going to put here 192.168.243. Click next, and we need to put the account here to run the distribution service key management. So I'm going to put here like vector infosol hyphen VMM admin, put the password for this account and where you want to store it. So I want to store it here, so I'm going to click on properties. I'm going to copy the extension's name and put it here on my VMM setup. Click next, and this is the port configuration, and we are all good, I think. Just click next, and here is the summary what we are going to do, and click on install. So this installation is going to take around 5 to 10 minutes. After the installation, we are going to have a one node VMM cluster running. So the next step, once the installation is done, we will reboot this node and we will verify we've installed the SQL cluster node on VMM on node 2. So I'm going to pause the recording here. Once the installation is done, we will write back. So now you can see the setup completed successfully. We can close this, and if I go and verify in our failover cluster manager the services is created or not. So under the roles you can see the services created, which we have created VMM role and this having this current IP address. So now I'm going to run a setup on my node 2. So I'm going in my computer and DVD drive setup.exe, which is our next step. Install a VMM 2016 on secondary VMM node. So I'm going to run this, click on install. click on VMM management server. So it's saying highly available VMM is already installed. Would you like to add this server in a node? Yes, I want to add. Click next and leave the settings default. I read and understand. I want to off this and everything looks good. It's taken the settings automatically. Click next and just need to put the password for this account VMM admin and click next. And here we go. Now you can see the installation is started. Now we can proceed with our next step, which is add a scale out file server shared with a VMM 2016. So I'm going to do this. To launch the VMM I'm going to log in my VMM 01 first, where it's already installed. So I'm going to put the IP address 192.168.1.243, which is my VMM cluster role IP 243. So click on connect. It's loading, and now if I go to Fabric, under the storage we have providers. So I'm going to add a storage provider. This is a Windows based file server. So click next, and the provider IP address should be what we have here. So I'm going to put my scale out file server IP address, which is given at 253. So I'm going to type that 192.168.1.235, and I'm going to create one run as account. So I'm going to call it like VMM admin, or you can create this like administrator. I'm going to create here. So I'm going to type here vector infosol hyphen administrator and put the password for administrator, and it will verify your domain credential on when you click on finish. So everything looks good. Click OK. Now click next, and it's scanning the discovering and import the storage device information. So it's going to take few seconds here, so we need to wait for it. Now you can see it's find the server name. So I'm going to click on next. Now we have this share, which is called VMM-HA. So we are good with this, and click on next and click on finish. So it's going to add. So you can see it's set the storage provider. It's setting the storage provider. It's going to take few seconds only, so I'm going to wait for it. So it's completed. We can go ahead and close this. Now you can see we have a responding storage provider. Now if I go on here on a Fabric and click on infrastructure and VMM server, and I'm going to refresh this, I can see it's also installed on node 2. So I'm going to close this and close everything. I'm going to re-log into this cluster to verify the VMM node is responding on both the nodes. So now you can see we have both VMM is responding, and actually we can go here and we can move our services to failover to other nodes. So I'm moving. You can see it's now the owner has been changed to VMM02, and it's bringing the things online, VMM services. So it's going to take some time. Now you can see it's moved, and again if you want to move, you can move it to other nodes. So just verify it. So it's going to connect very soon. I can see it's moved, and we are good with this. So actually we have completed this part also, deployment of VMM 2016 highly availability cluster with 2 node. Now we are on final stage where I'm going to create a deployment of 2 node cluster and add it to VMM. So the first thing we need to do, create and map a quorum disk with both the Hyper-V servers. So I'm going to do this on, I'm on my DC domain controller, and I'm going to create one disk here under the D drive, call it HV quorum disk. I'm going to size 1 gig, and I'm going to put the IP address of these two Hyper-V hosts. So it's 26 and 27. So I'm going to put here like HV target 26 192.168.1.2046. Let's verify one more time. What is the IP address? It's 26 and 246 and 47. So I'm going to put here 47, and again I'm going to put 192.168.1.247. Oops, it's 246, which I have to add now. 1.246. So both the surveys added. Click next. Click on create to create this. So we are good with this, and now I'm going to connect with both my Hyper-V hosts. So for that I need to click on ISC initiator node 1, and same click on node 2. Yes, I want to run. Put the target IP address 192.168.1.254. So connect with it. Enable. And now I'm going to open my disk management and map the disk. So bring online, initialize it, and put the name. Drive letter I'm going to use Q, and put HV quorum disk. Click on finish. Close this, and same need to follow on Hyper-V host node 2. So 168.1.254. Connect with this, enable the multipathing, go to disk management, and change the path. Drive letter I'm going to set to Q. Here we have. So we are done with this, and now we can move to next step, which is create a Windows Server cluster with both Hyper-V cluster nodes. So I'm going to do it now. So I'm going to launch failover cluster manager and run the validation with these two hosts. So validate cluster, click next, and this time I'm going to just find the objects. So HV01 and 02, click OK, click next, and run all the tests. So I'm going to pause the recording for testing. Once the testing is done, we will resume from there. Everything looks good here, so if you want you can view the reports. So I'm going to click on here to create a cluster. So I'm going to check the name which we have to give here and the IP address. So the name should be win-hv-cluster, and this is 236, so I'm going to put here HV-CLU and 236. Click next and add all eligible storage, so click next. So you have successfully completed the cluster wizard. Click finish, and now I will rename the storage and the network so that this should be HV quorum disk. Next we need to rename our network, so this is domain. Oops, we need to type again domain, and this is cluster. So we are good with this, and now you can see the next step, which is the last step basically in this demo, which we have to do: add a Hyper-V cluster to VMM 2016. So I'm going to do this now. So on a VMM cluster, I'm going to click on all host, and I'm going to create a one folder here called my HV cluster. I'm going to add my cluster, add Hyper-V host or cluster, so I'm going to add cluster. Click next. I'm going to add my administrator account for this. Click next, and I'm going to call it like win-hv-clu. Click next to scan it, and you got the cluster. Click next, and you can see this we have um, not install a Hyper-V role on this machine, so hypervisor role is unknown. So it's saying if the Hyper-V role is not installed on a selected host, the virtual machine manager will enable the role on this machine as a part of the add Hyper-V host process. So we are good with this, so I'm going to proceed with this. So click OK, click next, and now we are good. Click on finish. So I can see the job is started here. What we have job, so the first job is to add this HV02 on a cluster and add the HV1 and then refresh the host. So it's going to take some time because it's going to enable the Hyper-V role on both the machines, then it's going to reboot twice, and then after that it will enable both the machines, like add both the machines in a Hyper-V virtual machine manager. So you can see now it's enabling the Hyper-V and both the nodes. Task is running, almost 66% is completed. So you can see the status of these machines also. It's going to reboot very soon. You can see this HV01 is rebooted now, and this is reboot HV02 also very soon. So both the nodes you can see now has been rebooted. So you can see it's almost completed. The host node 2 is 99% completed, and the host 1 is also completed. So it's going to take some more time, few more seconds to get this completed, and then we are able to see these two hosts in our Hyper-V clusters under the VMM node. So let's wait for it. You can see it's enabled the Hyper-V role, and now it's installing the scvmm switch port settings. So a restart is required to complete claim of MPIO. Okay, we will restart it. So I'm going to restart my node 2. And so let's wait for this. Deploy a driver and install switch. So this is also completed. It's also asking to reboot the node 1. So I will reboot one by one. So let's verify node 2 is up now. can see it's refreshing the host settings now, and refresh the shared file shares. So let's wait for this, then we will restart the node 1 also. So everything is completed successfully, all looks good, and now we can see here both the host status is okay, role is host, and it's completed, and it's having other permission also. So I'm going to reboot this to get the CPU and this available memory utilization report. So I'm going to reboot this. Hyper-V host 1. So let's reboot it. So this this what we have created. Let's recap one more time. So the first thing which we have done, we have created a deployed SQL Server 2016 highly availability group with 2 node cluster, and then we have created a scale out file server cluster with 2 nodes, and after that we have created a uh, virtual machine manager availability cluster group with a 2 node, and finally we have created a Hyper-V cluster with 2 node Hyper-V node clusters, and then we have added to this VMM VMM on both the nodes. So one more time, let's verify this and see everything is working fine with this virtual machine manager. So now we have everything is redundant and highly available. Like if one host goes down for VMM or SQL or file server or a Hyper-V host itself, we are going to have our infrastructure up and running 24/7. So so that's all for this video, and thank you for watching, and please subscribe me for more videos. And if you have any query, any question related to this, you can post me on my given mail IDs. Thank you once again. Bye bye.